Welcome everybody to Hi-Fi, the show where I watch movies you probably shouldn't, and 2018 has come to a close. Boy, am I glad that this year is finally over, because now we can start a clean slate. But before we can start that clean slate, let's look back. Let's reminisce about 2018. And before we get our desserts, let's take out the trash. This, my friends, is the top 20 worst films of 2018. Let me profess before I continue forward, this is just my opinion. If there's a movie on this list that you really like that I didn't, that's okay. We can all have different opinions here. That's what my show's about, different opinions. And if you don't like it, that's okay. We'll work it out. Maybe. So let's talk a little bit about the films that came out this year. And before we hit the list, let's go through our dishonorable mentions. Tomb Raider. Yeah, this movie wasn't good, and I forgot it immediately as I walked out of the theater. And I'm not even kidding. I forgot I even saw the film. I can't even remember anything about it. It wasn't good. It wasn't good. Next up, Death Wish, a film that I had on the list originally, but another revenge film came along and then ruined this movie from being on my worst of the year list. It's still a dumb generic action film, it's still a dumb generic revenge film, directed by Eli Roth and poorly acted and phoned in by Bruce Willis. What would you expect out of a Death Wish remake? Pacific Rim Uprising. I was gonna put this on the list, but you know, other things came along and well, you know, oh well. And the big reason why this doesn't work is because, you know, Guillermo del Toro isn't back to direct this film, so of course it's not gonna be as good. It's poorly made and it's dull and I didn't care, and wow, Shocker on Shock Street, it's not good. Venom. Wow, wee wah, I hate this movie. This movie was awful. I don't get why people like this movie. It doesn't make any sense to me why people enjoy this film, but for some reason, people really liked it. I thought it was poorly done. Tom Hardy gives one of his most over-the-top, hilarious Brooklyn accents, but it's really bad. And then when he becomes Venom, he becomes consistently funny. And the movie is consistently hilarious, which keeps it off the list, because as bad as the film consistently is, it's still very funny to watch. So it's safe, but it's not good. I still don't recommend it anyways. Insidious: The Last Key, a generic January horror film. I didn't like it at all. It's like sitting right in between the third and the first film. And it's really just kind of there, and I don't like it, and it's creepy and awkward and not scary at all, because, like, what I mean by creepy, it's not because it's actually scary, it's creepy because you have the two guys that are old, and they're hitting on young girls, and that makes me very uncomfortable. It's kind of gross, and I don't like it. And the villain's called Keyface, even though it's actually showing the demon with keys on its fingers, but what do I know? What do I fucking know? And last but not least on dishonorable mentions, Red Sparrow. This movie was terrible. It's 2.5 hours long of nothing happening, and Jennifer Lawrence speaking in a terrible Russian accent. Boy oh boy, I couldn't have asked for anything better this year than a boring spy film. Golly gee, golly wee. I hated this movie. It was not good. Just ugh. And now, let us commence the top 20 worst films of 2018. Starting off the list, Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom. Boy, this is the worst Jurassic Park film I have ever seen. This movie has two films going on at once. One film is save the dinosaurs off explodey rock planet, and then the other one is, hey, get the genetically altered dinosaurs to become super soldiers, and they sell them in the black market. It's as stupid as it sounds. Plus, there's also the plot line of, like, this young girl who's actually a clone of her mother, and she does a decision at the end, which was stupid. All this dumb nonsense constantly happening. It is such a stupid, cluttered, goofy, ridiculous movie that I didn't like. It was awful, it was terrible, it wasn't interesting, it sucked, and I hated it. Number 19, The Happy Time Murders. Another bad Melissa McCarthy comedy hitting off the list. Oh goody. The only reason why it's not higher in the list was because the puppeteering from the Jim Henson Company was really good. Other than that, this movie sucks. It's not funny, it's not interesting. I hate every character. It's annoying, it's obnoxious, it's mean-spirited. Everybody is such a rude asshole, and I hate that. I hate when that's the comedy is, hey look, everybody's a dick. But it's like not like funny, it's not like they get a comeuppance or anything. It's just they're a dick, and they never stop being a dick. And it's so annoying, and they're being assholes towards each other, which doesn't make it funny. It's two assholes acting like assholes towards each other. And that's what the Happy Time Murders is. And it relies on you to laugh at sex jokes of puppets, and because puppets do drugs and puppets curse, that's it. That's all your jokes. And it is not funny. It's just painful to sit through. It was a big disappointment for me this year. Number 18, The First Purge. This is the worst Purge movie I've seen ever. It surpasses The First Purge. Not The First Purge, but the First Purge film ever. I hated that movie for so long, and I said nothing can be as bad as that. And then this film comes along. It takes 50 minutes, not even kidding, 50 minutes near an hour in this about hour and 40-minute movie for the Purge to actually happen. And when the Purge stuff starts, it's still not interesting. It's still really boring. I didn't care about the characters. They were one-dimensional. Everything that was happening was going at such a slow pace, especially for a Purge film. It was immensely slow to sit through. I don't really understand what they were trying to do with this one, and it's a prequel, and I don't care for prequels, and I don't care for what they were doing with this film. I don't get it, and I don't understand what their point was. It was bad. It's a bad movie, full and through. Horrific action, terrible editing, terrible characters, super flat story, and it took forever to get anywhere. And of course, the ending was just, wow, what a big I don't care. So, yeah, and it hits every point that you would imagine. It is the worst Purge film I've seen to date. Next up on the list, number 17. The film that knocked off Death Wish off my list, Peppermint. This movie is 10 times worse than Death Wish, because this is the biggest reason. Death Wish at least took its time to set up the scenario and the situation at hand, and then they kill off the wife and daughter. Bruce Willis then at least takes action and then goes one by one to kill everybody. It hits the generic beat of a revenge plot, but it's still at least holding what makes a revenge plot a revenge plot. Peppermint goes at a rocket pace. The first 2 minutes of the film, like 5 minutes in, the daughter and the husband, are both dead already. The trial happens practically immediately, and then pretty much instantaneously, the people that killed the daughter and the father are dead in the first 15 minutes of the film, and it was an off-screen kill. What the fuck? That's like, you took everything that makes a revenge film, and does it in 2 seconds flat. It was awful. I couldn't believe that they had the balls to do that. And it was terrible. And the movie is moving so fast with its plot points, I thought, oh, this must be the end of the film. But there was still 20 fucking minutes left. And I was like, what more do you have? And that's the problem. The film just constantly has things to still do, even though it's rushing everything. It's like she's instantaneously a badass with a gun, and they skip over everything. They skip over so much character details and character plot or something that could have been interesting. And it does it so much worse than what Death Wish did, which was already not a very good movie to begin with. So, this movie was terrible. Number 16. The Hurricane Heist, a Rob Cohen film in 2018. This is the man that made The Fast and the Furious and Triple X. This man perpetually lives in 1999. It's like extreme, and it's so cool and awesome, and it's not. It's so stupid. This movie is like, I want to be a disaster movie, but I also want to be a heist movie at the same time. It has terrible special effects, hokey fucking acting beyond belief, and it's so stupid. It's as dumb as you would expect. A heist during a hurricane, and this hurricane is like supposed to be like a category 6 because climate change, and it's so goofy. And I'm like, this movie was kind of funny, but it was also just so stupid The visual effects are awful. It looks like something that would have come out in like the early 2000s. It feels like a direct-to-DVD movie, but no, this film had a theatrical release though. It's on Netflix if you want to see it for weird fucking curiosity, which is how I watched it, but I don't recommend it. It's not a good movie. It's still a bad film. It's a bad Rob Cohen film, just about as what you would expect. A film that would have probably been like made in like 1998 during like films like Dante's Peak or Tornado when they were coming out. It would have been fine then, maybe, not even. I don't know, probably not. It's still a stupid movie. Number 15, The Nutcracker in the Four Realms. Another terrible Nutcracker movie to add to the stockpile graveyard of bad Nutcracker films. I don't get why these movies are still being made, especially this one, because this one was made by Disney, and secondly, this just feels like Alice in Wonderland, but like Alice Through the Looking Glass to be more exact. And that movie was terrible. I hated Alice Through the Looking Glass, and that doesn't change my opinion about Nutcracker in the Four Realms. It is terrible. Between this bad dialogue, the awful looking like special effects, Keira Knightley's baby voice. Let's talk about that for a bit. I don't know what she was thinking, but she had this like childlike voice throughout the whole film, and it was very annoying. I don't know what she was told to do, and it was weird, and I don't get it, and I don't want to hate Keira Knightley, but I hate her in this movie. She's awful. She's the worst thing about this film. Helen Mirren is the villain, and it's like, Helen Mirren, what did they do to get you in this movie? It's so bad. It's just a poorly made film. The characters are constantly telling you things that are happening when you can visually see what's happening. It's like it forgets the idea of what a movie is. It's like, hey, let's tell you about everything versus what you can fucking visually see. You can see what they're doing, and they have to look at the camera and go, but this is what this is and everything. And you're like, stop taking me out of the movie to explain to the audience what the fuck we're looking at. We should be able to pick it up like normal people. But this movie thinks that we're all idiots. Number 14, Axl. Boy, was this movie generic. This was the most generic kids film I had seen all year. It just hit every single plot point you could imagine. The dead mother cliche, the estranged father cliche, the terrible, crappy, underdeveloped love scenes between two characters, the bully character, the dog. It's all there. But this dog is a robot dog. He's a military-grade robot dog. Oh boy, and it is ugly as sin. It is the ugliest looking thing I had ever seen in a movie. Oh god, it was horrifying to look at. I was like, ugh, that thing looks terrible. It was gross to look at. I appreciate they tried to do animatronic over CGI all the time, but man, this thing was just hideous to look at. Axl is just the story of a kid that's a dirt bike racer, and his father and him work together. They're not rich or anything like that, but they, but he's a really good motocross bike racer, and this kid who's the bully character, essentially, is like, hey man, you got some sick rad skills. I want you to come over at my place, and, he's showing off how much of a fucking cool kid he is because he has all this money, and this kid's like, I'm too humble for this shit, so he bounces like a good kid. And it's just like, and then this bully character just suddenly hates him because he's like better at him at motocross, and also he thinks that he's too cool for him, and he's like, this fucking guy is a dick. And it's so stupid, and I hate this movie, and it's generic and dumb. And then he bumps into this military weapon dog that he befriends, and it's ugly as shit, and it's terrible, and the military is searching for it, and I don't care. This movie is like, for me, it's as generic as they come. It's like the movie Monster Trucks. It really does. It feels like the same movie. Although this got a summer release. I don't know how that got possible, but this movie was released in the summer, and it was just, it was a really poor experience to sit in the theater to see this. And it's unfortunate because Thomas Jane's in this movie, and I like Thomas Jane a lot. I actually really want him to be in good movies all the time, but he's never given that opportunity. He was in The Expanse, and he was great in The Expanse, but I was like, damn, I wish he was in better stuff. Like, I thought he would have been great in The Punisher, but too bad that movie was not that great. So it's like, ugh, poor Thomas Jane, he can't catch a break. But you know what, AXL just hits that list again. I'm sorry to say it, but this movie was just a fart in the wind for me. I could care too fucking less about this film. It was pretty bad. Number 13, Winchester. Boy, did I find this movie to be superbly boring. This was a film that could have been a great documentary. I wish it was actually just a documentary about Sarah Winchester and her life and about her house and just kind of taking a tour of the Winchester home, because the home is 10 times more fascinating and her as a person in real life was more fascinating than anything this movie gave us. The thing is that for a movie that's gonna talk about ghosts, Sarah Winchester, and the Winchester home, and how there's like thousands of rooms in this home that either go nowhere or cryptic maze or crazy fucking bizarre. They use maybe 5 of the same locations throughout the same like parts in the movie over and over again. So there's not much variety in the locations of the house, which is extremely disappointing. But every time they show off the house, it's always an establishing shot of people just constantly working on this house. And it doesn't matter. Like, there was a scene where Sarah Winchester and the doctor are talking to each other, and then she says, let's go in the other room and discuss this. And literally it cuts to an establishing shot outside of the home when they were already in the home, and before that scene they had another establishing shot of the house being built. So they had an establishing shot of the house being built, that conversation that lasted for maybe a couple of minutes. They moved to a different room in the house, cut to another establishing shot of the house being built, and then continues the conversation. It was horrific. The editing was terrible. I couldn't believe it. This movie had a lot of opportunity to be interesting. It could have been a very psychological story where we could have actually asked, well, is Sarah Winchester crazy? Was the doctor kind of crazy because he's on absinthe and all these other things? You know, there's all these plot points that when you think that's going to happen in the movie, you realize you're making a better movie than the actual movie is in and of itself. You're constantly like, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? And it just is this constant buildup of things they could have done, and they just don't do it. It's frustrating, it's boring, it hits every plot detail, and pretty much all you need to know is, in the end, the ghosts were real. And the ghosts that were killed by the Winchester rifles come after Sarah Winchester, and it is stupid, and it becomes like a Conjuring 2 over-the-top ending, where they're throwing people all around, and guns are being lifted in the air and being shot at all over the place. It is as dopey as they come, and it was dumb. This movie was stupid. It was a bad January horror film, and I didn't like it. Number 12, Unfriended Dark Web, or Unfriended Game Night, whatever the fuck you want to call this movie, because god damn it, this movie is terrible. In preparation to Unfriended Dark Web, I did manage to catch Unfriended for the first time ever, and boy do I not like these movies. The characters are always super annoying, the characters are rude, irresponsible, dumb. They could easily find loopholes and ways around the situation, but they're too stupid to think about it. The Dark Web people, might I add, they're not even called the Dark Web, they're called the Darknet people throughout the film. So I don't know why this movie's called Unfriended the Dark Web, but it should be called Unfriended the Darknet then, because they always go, oh man, that's Darknet, dude. And it's like, oh my god, and the Darknet people are constantly pixelated, and the video, like, their voice is modulated, and it's like magic. It's like they suddenly have computer magic and they just know how to do this kind of stupid shit. It was awful. There's over like 18 different endings to this film, and I didn't care what ending I got, because in the end, I'm not gonna watch all the endings of this film to see which one was the better ending, because regardless of that fact, this movie sucks. The bottom line, Unfriended Dark Web is a terrible movie. It makes the first movie look like fucking Citizen Kane in comparison, and that movie's still really stupid. And this one just does everything dumber. It manages to get everything stupider, and this is such a dumb fucking movie. I hate these characters. I hate just this movie, and like everything that they could do could be solved much easier, but they make it harder for themselves, and this movie is just a goddamn mess. It is an absolute mess to sit through. Number 11, Blumhouse's Truth or Dare. When I thought Unfriended was stupid and the characters were stupid, this movie is 10 times that. And also, again, loopholes. There are so many loopholes you can have in the game of Truth or Dare, and you could have won it and not have to do half the shit they had to do in this movie. And Truth or Dare is the movie that Jason Blumhouse was like, yeah, let's put my name on that fucker. Let's put my name over Truth or Dare. Trying to make the game Truth or Dare into a horror movie is a goddamn joke. This movie was hilarious though. Man oh man, was I laughing my ass through the whole thing. It was so terrible. The characters are awful people, and they deserve everything that's coming to them, and it is funny. When a man tried to impale himself on a pool stick, the guy pushes him, but he slips on the ball, and then he fucking falls and breaks his neck on the fucking other pool table. I laughed so hard I was peeing myself. This movie is an absolute joke. Between the Snapchat filtered demon ghost face that's everywhere, it looks like an Apex Twin thing. Oh my god, it is goofy as all hell. This movie is atrocious. It is such a not scary concept. It's not a scary horror film, and some things are just utterly hilarious. There's a moment where like a character is like, I'm gay, but I don't want to tell my dad, and literally it brings up this whole thing where he has to go, you know, tell truth, and he has to tell his father that he's gay, and then literally it cuts away, and then he comes back, he's like, oh yeah, I told my dad I was gay, and he's fine with it. And he was like stressing about that throughout the whole film, like my dad's gonna kill me if he finds out I'm gay. And it's like they made a big deal out of it just for it not to be a big deal anymore. It's like, Jesus Christ, this fucking movie doesn't know what it's doing. And again, Truth or Dare, how does it make it scary? Not at all. It is absolutely hilarious. And again, so many different ways these characters could solve their situations, but they are just too fucking stupid to realize it. And oh man, it is a bad movie.